from a technical perspective. If you're in a place where you're at rock bottom, I can really relate to that. And one huge factor is community. So that's exactly why I feel like Matt Saunders and the whole team here have just done an excellent job of providing a safe space where people genuinely care about you, and curating other community members who are not even Cisco employees to help out other people. We're not your counselors, we're not therapists, but we're at least a sounding board. We're at least a set of people that care about you, that don't have a vested interest in your specific career details. So I just want to give a certain level of encouragement to anybody out there who needs a place to find the next steps of whatever your career is at, to go to the CLN network, Cisco Learning Network.
Hello and welcome to the Cisco Learning Network podcast. That's Jason Belk, Senior Technical Advocate for Cisco Learning and Certifications. In this episode, Jason sits down with Cisco Learning Network Community Manager Tanner Swift to discuss his career journey. Together, Jason and Tanner discuss things like the benefits of having a public profile, finding your passion, how to prioritize mental health to avoid burnout, and tips for succeeding in the Cisco certifications world and in a networking career.
Welcome to the Cisco Learning Network podcast. So happy to be sitting down with Jason Belk today. Jason, first and foremost, just wanted to check in with you. How are things on your end?
Personally, doing well, though I know outside of my personal well-being, there's lots of things going on at Cisco as well as the world. So I'm acknowledging that, but I'm joyful and hopeful.
Great answer, and definitely something worth acknowledging. For those that are unaware of your role and what you do, can you just give us a brief background, what you do here with Cisco?
Sure. Yeah, in my current role, I'm in Cisco's Learning and Certifications team as a Senior Technical Advocate. I've been in here since 2021, but I've actually been at Cisco for quite a while. I left and came back, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But basically, from my end, my job is a mixture of a jack of all trades, a fixer, so to speak, trying to help everybody else be successful in a couple of different areas. One being what we're doing right here, being out in the community, being the voice of the customer, trying to understand what it's like to be a learner. And I'm a lifelong learner, so I can relate to that. Secondly, I basically help our content development team, where I'm providing technical insight, whether that's for the folks who are hard at work on our certification blueprints and other parts of certifications. They might tap me on the shoulder to get a second opinion on things, as well as for content development for courses. Think similar type of role for that, maybe tapped on the shoulder to provide advice for the people who are already doing a great job. And then building content myself, walking the walk, so to speak. And I have a series of tutorials I'd love people to check out on Cisco U that cover generative AI and the role of a network engineer. Definitely go on Cisco U and check those out. And I also have a video coming out, if it hasn't already come out by the time this podcast recording, on our YouTube channel for Cisco U, covering basically the basics of using generative AI as a network engineer, taking one of those tutorials and then giving you in less than 10 minutes the nuts and bolts of what that looks like. So that's a 10,000 foot view, and I could probably just do an hour just on what I do day to day, but we're here to talk about the past and the future.
Speaking of some content and stuff that you've done, some previous podcast experiences with us and with Cisco, can you kind of discuss how that has shaped today's conversation as we get into some of your early career and career journey as well?
Sure. For me, I've always been an avid podcaster. It just baffles my mind that you can have the wisdom of the world in your pocket wherever you go, whether you're on an airplane, taking your dog for a walk, or cleaning some dishes. I really appreciate the care and leadership that you on this team have over a long period of time built an amazing podcast that I'm now a part of that story. And so for other podcasts outside of Cisco, I recently was on the Nerd Journey podcast with Nick Corte. And that was an inspiration for me to be like, oh man, I'm getting a lot of value out of these conversations. And I hope other people can find value for that too. So I went to Matt Saunders from your team and say, let's do something similar here and have a similar conversation. But I've had other podcast recordings over the years, even one earlier this year that I really enjoyed with the Art of Network Engineering with Quinn Snyder from our team. And it was just a joy to really just reflect on the things that have given me both personal success, career success, and also the struggles along the way.
So let's start with early in your career, just kicking things off. I don't want to poke on anybody's age here, but take you back a little bit. What motivated you in your transition from being an IT analyst to a network engineer?
So I came into Cisco as an intern in 2010, and that was coming out of the real estate crisis. So we were all in a kind of a similar, I'd say, point of instability and transition as a world, as a market. And so I wanted to find a job that would align to my personal values and give me skills that would carry me forward through the rest of my career. And I had a computer science undergrad, so like every good computer science graduate, I became an IT analyst working in spreadsheets. And I learned so much from that team, but it came to the point where I was reaching the limit of what I could learn in my current role. I mean, there's always more to learn, but I felt like there was more potential there. There was a friend I'd met through, we're hired on at the same time, and they had a great university relations program where he went to San Jose State, I went to Santa Clara University, kind of two sides of the same coin in the Silicon Valley. And he was a network engineer, and he was just really great guy. His name's Albin. He's since moved on from Cisco, I believe, but he was here for a number of years in Cisco IT as a network engineer and then in security. And I just saw him, flying around on the terminal, having a great time, doing these things that just seemed like, I don't know, the things you see in the hacker movies where you have the terminal and you do all the cool stuff. And I was like, I want to do that. That sounds cool. and someone who was a systems thinker, like I really enjoyed deep, thoughtful thinking in systematic ways. And for me, network engineering appealed to me in that regard, where I could work within an existing system of technology, but not have to build it myself. Where I could stand on the shoulders of other people who had put a lot of thought and care into these protocols and procedures to really make the internet work. Being a virtual plumber, so to speak, where in years past, the physical plumbing still absolutely necessary, but now being able to connect people in ways that just has now accelerating growth even since then. So my key transition there was realizing I wanted to get more into the engineering side. I wanted to build credibility in my job. So if the layoffs came, because even back then we had a major layoff at that time as a result of that housing crisis. And it really opened my eyes coming into Cisco, being like, oh, like even good people who are doing a good job need to be ready for the layoff, because sometimes it's the whole department and it's completely outside of your productivity. And sometimes it's completely outside your control. And sometimes it is in your control. And so I need to be in control of my own career. And I need to have a set of skills that I love and a set of skills that are growing, so that no matter what I'm doing, if I happen to leave Cisco, not because of my own decision, or if I want to find another opportunity, that I'm able to be portable in what I'm doing in something that is market applicable. And network engineering was that fit for me, especially because I had somebody else on the other side that I cared for and trusted, who loved it and was able to mentor me along the way.
And looking back at that transition during that time, can you speak to any roadblocks or challenges that you faced early in your career and kind of how you overcame it during that transition?
Yeah, I think one of the things was just overcoming the perception of not being a technical person, because even though I had a technical background of computer science major, like my actual day-to-day responsibilities were pivot tables and spreadsheets and building reports and things that weren't directly relevant to the job I wanted to get into. And so I had to provide some personal leadership to say, what is going to give me the credibility to be able to pivot into this career? So one was getting the certification myself. So I got my CCNA, and I didn't pass on the first attempt. I don't even think I passed on the second attempt. So there were just lots of tips and tricks. One of them being that helped me pass that exam, apart from just hard studying, doing the lab work, doing the practice, on a regular basis. I was being mentored by not only my friend Albin, who was in a similar walk in life, but like let's say not senior engineer, but at that time, intermediate level engineer who was probably, 5 to 7 years older than us. And he would help us with subnetting tricks and go on the whiteboard. And I would go up at least once a week, if not more often, because we were all in the same building, building 12. I was on the first floor and they were on the third or fourth floor. And I would go upstairs after I finished my primary responsibilities and go up there and just learn and just listen and just do these problems. And so that just helped me so much, both in terms of building community with a team that I wanted to be a part of one day, but also just helping fuel that, I guess, transition, and that I was building credibility for myself and seeing that, oh, I can do this. This isn't rocket science. Yeah, it's going to take me time to build up these skills, but this is something interesting, and the people I want to work with are interesting too.
Before Jason continues his career journey, he takes a second to talk about his strategies for facing some of the challenges he's experienced throughout his career, especially the importance of using the strength of a community.
We all have ups and downs. Right now, I feel like I'm on an uphill climb, and there's been points in my career where it's heading downwards and you eventually either burn yourself out or have outside situations or failures in your life or failures outside your control that make you feel like there's no hope. You've hit the rock bottom, that there's nothing that you can do as a person to get out of. And so first of all, I want to tell you, wherever you're at, if you're in that situation, that there is hope. That even though there's people on social media pushing things all different directions, that there are real practical ways for you to improve yourself, your mental health. So if you need counseling, that's great. Definitely recommend that. If you need, spiritual community, go for that. But like from a technical perspective, if you're in a place where you're at rock bottom, I can really relate to that. And one huge factor is community. So that's exactly why I feel like Matt Saunders and the whole team here have just done an excellent job of providing a safe space where people genuinely care about you, and curating other community members who are not even Cisco employees to help out other people. We're not your counselors, we're not therapists, but we're at least a sounding board. We're at least a set of people that care about you, that don't have a vested interest in your specific career details. So I just want to give a certain level of encouragement to anybody out there who needs a place to find the next steps of whatever your career is at, to go to the CLN network, Cisco Learning Network, find one of those subforums that's related to your field, and find a community member to help you find those next steps for your technical journey. If that's going for your CCNA, that's great. If it's going for a DevNet associate, if that's going for your CyberOps associate, if it's going for a professional or expert level, go for it. And for me, that was the key point. I think rather than talking about my specific details of my lowest rock bottom point, I'm happy to share that in person with other people. I don't necessarily want to record that for the whole world to have for posterity. But what I do want to say is that community was the key aspect, is that if you're being around people who genuinely care about your well-being and who have a vision for the future for you that's better than where you're currently at, that's going to get you out of wherever you're at. And it's going to take time, and you just take it day by day.
During this transition, I'm sure it was very crucial, as it is for a lot of technologists today, to build a public profile. Can you speak to how building one of those today is so crucial for technologists?
Yeah, and this is something that's come up for me several times over the past 6 months. I've had people reach out to me to LinkedIn, and for the people who are earnest seekers and really trying to find that job, I've responded with a similar response to all of them. And it's building this public profile, because I feel like in this day and age, everybody and their mother has a resume. You need a resume. You need to have a great resume. You need to be honest on your resume, not just BSing your way through whatever things you think they want to hear. But in addition to your resume, what's really going to differentiate you is that you're walking the talk. And that, I mean that you have a place that you can point to that's publicly accessible. And I mean, you could have it privately accessible and then share it, but it's really in your advantage to have it on somewhere like GitHub or your own personal website, or there's a million solutions out there. I don't care what they are, as long as it's something.com that you can send an email. And on that public profile, it's going to be a collection of your work. And if you're a network engineer, that might be a set of configs for a sample topology, a CML file, something that's going to reflect the level of complexity that you're currently pushing yourself towards. And for me, that looked like, at the point where I wanted to accelerate my career, I'd already been in the networking team, network operations, moving to network automation. We're skipping ahead a little bit in my journey, but to talk about the key point where that public profile came into bear was I had on my public GitHub just one or two things at that time. This is 10 years ago. And I had a 3-day course for Cisco's Network Services Orchestrator, which is a service provider / large enterprise automation solution that was from an acquisition, I believe 2014.
Jason mentioned two things here that we want to make sure that you're caught up on, just in case you've never heard of them before, especially because Jason talks a lot about these two things in a bit: Network to Code and NSO. Network to Code is a network automation solution provider that focuses on changing the way that networks are managed and operated. On their LinkedIn page, Network to Code's bio reads, quote, "Network to Code is the foremost expert in network automation strategy and has deployed more network automation projects than any other company in the world. Our network automation solutions help organizations transform the way their networks are deployed, managed, and consumed. Through managed and professional services, Network to Code deploys data-driven network automation based on net DevOps principles to improve reliability, efficiency, and security while reducing costs." End quote. And as Jason mentioned, Cisco NSO is Cisco Crosswork Network Services Orchestrator, which is an industry-leading orchestration platform for hybrid networks. With its lifecycle service automation, you're enabled to design and deliver high-quality services faster and more easily. It includes network functions virtualization, software-defined networking, as well as your traditional physical network and all its components.
And for me, having that on my profile was a key differentiator, where I saw an opportunity pop up to go to Network to Code. And Network to Code was a key influential player in the network automation of everybody. They attract and retain such excellent talent. At least while I was there, I haven't been as close in touch with them over the years since, but like during my time there was 11 people at the company and they grew to 50 by the time I left. And now I think there's several hundred at least. And what they were trying to do was do the right thing for the customer in teaching people network automation. And I know Cisco does that, and I know Cisco services do that. So I'm not trying to distinguish them. I'm just saying from my experience, I was in Cisco IT and I wanted to grow. And I felt like I'd been at Cisco for 7 or 8 years at that point, including my internship. And I was like, I want to see if the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. Like, is everybody facing the same problems, or is this just a Cisco thing?
Sure.
And one of the things that helped me about Network to Code was that they were a consultancy that was vendor neutral. And so I got to see their Vistas, the Junipers, all down their list. The Cisco stuff, obviously, too, not just the Cisco stuff that I was used to, which is Cisco IOS XE, but I was dealing with ASAs, Nexus, and XR, and all that kind of stuff. So I was having to teach network automation to network engineers across, financial sectors and governments, all these kind of different areas where it's like I'm no longer looking at it from my little Cisco bubble. And I was quickly realizing that we're all facing the same problems. We're all facing the same struggles. And the solutions that Cisco was providing, we're touching those. Like something like Cisco NSO is a great solution for that. Of course, there are other things like Cisco Red Hat Ansible and DNA Center, things that try to solve those problems in different ways. But my point being, when I left Cisco and I had this public profile, it gave me the credibility to get my foot in the door into this company that I really respected the leadership of, that they were providing both in thought leadership, where Jason Edelman had written a book and put it out there for people to learn from, as well as just teaching people the basic skills of network automation that I'd benefited so much from people like Kirk Byers and other folks. And for me to take all this stuff that I'd internalized, that I had to use in my day-to-day job when I was in network operations, we were struggling to keep up with the demands of the customer based on the needs of the business. And we were just continuing trying to build automation, keeping up with all the different problems that were coming up as the business was growing. I saw this opportunity for Network to Code. I felt the operational struggle being at Cisco IT, but I also felt like, there's an opportunity for me to help more people than just this great group of people in Cisco IT. I was able to help more people by removing myself from the Cisco equation and connecting with customers all across the board. And I did that through my public profile by having all this 3-day course that I helped develop with 2 other people, Patrick and Brandon. And we built labs, we built slides, we built, fun things that we felt were relevant to our Cisco IT network engineers, and also implicitly were then also relevant to lots of other people outside of Cisco. And it's still on GitHub. People can check it out. It's kind of dated now because NSO's moved on in great ways. But when I had that on my plug profile, when I messaged Jason Edelman, I was like, hey, I'd be interested in an opportunity for your company. And I sent him a link to my GitHub. I said, here's a 3-day course I built, not me exclusively, but I was involved in the creation of this course. I can teach it. I know what's going on. I'm not just a minor player. Taking that accelerated my career tremendously, where I was no longer just helping one set of technology and one set of people. I was starting to help lots of sets of people. So when I came back to Cisco, there was a huge opportunity for growth.
And what prompted you to return to Cisco after your time? Because it seems like you really enjoyed your time in that startup environment.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it came down to, is that just the timing for my phase in life. My wife and I have been married for 5 years, and we wanted to start having kids. And my commitment to excellence was so high that I didn't feel like I could meet the excellent standards of what Network to Code was doing based on the size of the company and the time I could commit with starting a family, because I wanted to take time off. I know Network to Code has different options and they take care of the people. I'm not trying to diss anybody in this. I'm just saying for my own personal priorities. Coming back to Cisco, I saw an opportunity pop up that just seemed like it was written for me. And on top of that, I knew Cisco had 3 months paternity leave for gender neutral, whoever was taking care of the kid. And so I messaged one of my friends who I'd worked with before when I was building this course, named Victor. And I was like, should I apply for this position? It seems like it was written for me. And he's like, yes, you should definitely apply for this position. And in the course of just a few weeks, I was saying my goodbyes to Network Code, being honest and transparent as much as I could in terms of that transition, and then working for a great leader named Omar Sultan, and then another guy who shortly left, unfortunately, named Carl Moberg. And so working with Omar and Victor and the other folks in the NSO team, that's what brought me back to Cisco, was the people. Like, I love the people in Network to Code. I still keep in touch with them, but the people I knew I was coming back to were people I could trust, people that had my back, and people who were working with a technology that I wanted to grow in and teach others about as well.
And I think that's super, super important when whether it's joining a startup job and or joining, a bigger company like Cisco is the people that you work with and work for and how they can impact you and your growth. Can you add to that? How did your responsibilities change when you rejoined Cisco? You mentioned about the people that you work with, but obviously there's still some expectation from yourself, right, to come in and make an impact right away.
I have one specific story that comes to mind. So Jared Healy, excellent leader from that organization, that he sat down with me. And I think it's the last time I've been to Cisco campus since the pandemic. Basically, he sat down with me and said, Jason, your vision, what you're going to accomplish here is I want you to make our documentation as good as or better than Red Hat Ansible. Because we were both kind of in the same space. And I'd been teaching Ansible. I knew exactly what the documentation was. They did a great job. It had, strengths and weaknesses, but Cisco's NSO's documentation at that time, I knew it inside and out because I'd read the PDFs. I worked with the different things on DevNet at the time, and people were doing the best they could, but it needed my particular set of backgrounds and skills to come to bear to take it to that next level, where I had that operational voice of the customer, where I knew the skills that were being implicitly assumed in the documentation, where it assumed you needed to know something like XML and Yang and service development and data modeling and all these things that for somebody who had a strong software development background, especially in a Java background, these things, those words probably are just second hat.
Right.
For me, coming from a network operations background where even something like Linux, like I had to use cheat sheets to get into a jump host, and you had to have a certain fluency with Linux just to install the NSO application. So we started with, under Omar's direction, say, hey, let's make a simpler set of instructions on how to install this application. And then moving on from there, we cast a vision. I used a mirror board to say, what are all the skills that we really need to know to have NSO be something that you're comfortable with, that I had to go through in that struggle. Okay, I need to know modeling language like Yang. I need to know XML to be able to work with the templates. I need to know how it's structured within the application. So we mapped out all these things, broke them down into 101, 201, 301 levels for each of those skills, and showed the user flow, and then worked with Ryan Rose on the DevNet team, as well as a few other, UX engineers that did an excellent job in terms of reflecting not only the technical priorities of what we were trying to accomplish in accomplishing that vision that Jared had set out before me, but also the user experience priorities of making sure that we're not just dumping information and overloading, but curating it, breaking it down into smaller bits, making it interesting and relevant, giving hands-on labs. I was one of the main people getting the NSO DevNet sandbox set up, because it's like, how am I going to learn this if I have trouble installing it? Well, I can have a pre-made environment for me to play around with, and that's still on the sandbox team today. And so not only that, but the other component, going back to the user experience, is having the personas in mind. Okay, there's 3 different types of people. There's somebody who's more on the networking side, there's somebody who's more on the software side, and there's somebody that's more in the middle, kind of the net DevOpsy. Knowing that the information we were communicating needed to be curated based on the different audiences that we were working with. And even if it's the same information, packaging it and rephrasing it and giving certain paths to the people that were more relevant to the type of skills that they would need.
I'd like to dive into the technical advocacy and teaching side of things for just a moment. What could you say that you enjoy most about your role in developer relations?
For me, it really comes down to the same thing, the people, because it's almost like if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, does it matter? I mean, yeah, maybe if it falls on a power line, yeah, it matters. But like, that's the cycle of life. But like, if I create a tutorial on a generative AI, nobody reads it, does it matter? Well, in a small sense, it does to me personally, because it improves my skills as a teacher, so that eventually, and this is one of the things I wanted to point out, is I've been creating content now for over 10 years, and I didn't start out very articulate. I feel like I'm doing a good job of connecting with you in this conversation, but like my first podcast, at least on my side, were not so good. My first tutorials 10 years ago, not so good, but iterating, improving, even if your audience is very small, of just your immediate team, continuing to have that vision of moving forward. And so like what I enjoy most about my role in developer relations is I feel like I now have the credibility and confidence and skills to help a lot of people with their problems in operations, specifically with Cisco technologies, and whether that's networking, automation, or other stuff, generative AI, or other things that I'm learning down the road. So that's what I enjoy, because if I have all the books in the world around me, but I'm not actually helping anybody, it's really just an exercise in futility.
No, totally understand. On the teaching side of things, what advice would you give to someone looking to create or deliver technical courses?
I would say, first off, think of who's your audience in mind, because technical courses could be a high school student learning Python. It could be a CCIE level person trying to pivot into DevNet who's learning coding for the first time. Or it could be someone who's a DevNet professional trying to go for their DevNet expert. And there's all these different directions and pivot points. And maybe it's I'm expert in one area and not so expert in this other area I'm trying to get into, or I'm not expert in any area and I'm trying to move forward from ground zero. And so I would say someone who's looking to create and deliver technical courses, that you need to know it yourself first, so that when you stand up on stage and someone asks a question, I don't know everything perfectly, so that you're honest on stage and about what you know, what you don't know. But if you don't know anything, you need to work on yourself first. And what you do know, focus on your strengths.
I'd like to flip the script for a moment, if we could, Jason, off of work. I think it's an area that we probably don't talk about enough as a society in dealing with stress and personal development while still trying to, grow your career. How would you identify, a time that you were experiencing a burnout, whether it was early on or if it's been more recently?
I'll focus on just more recently because I've been going under a lot of personal growth where I feel like I've built a lot of technical credibility over my 10 years at Cisco, starting as an analyst, moving into an engineer, moving into teaching, leaving Cisco and coming back, where my manager, Ryan Rose, excellent person, Kareem as well, leader of our team, they've identified certain leadership characteristics in me that I feel like I'm now realizing and trying to help other people. And it's like, I always thought of leadership as a positional thing. It's like, okay, I have the manager title, I'm able to make things happen. And for me now, realizing that leadership is influence and that I'm able to provide leadership even on the ground floor without any people reporting to me and help everyone else around me, that has been just a tremendous source of joy to see other people grow around me and see the potential of what we can do together. But on the flip side, I'm an introvert. You might not be able to tell it because I feel very comfortable in this conversation because I'm talking to a room by myself, but that's the benefit of the digital world in which we live in. Whereas an introvert, I can give you 100% for an hour here, and I can go and lay down as much as I need to the rest of the day and watch Parks and Rec, watch Sherlock Holmes, and do things that really recharge me. So that way I can be there 100% when I need to, because I feel like when I was in the office physically, I was able to build tremendous connections with people from all walks of life, from executives to interns. And for me, being in the office also was draining as an introvert. I didn't feel like there's anywhere I could go and recharge. And so that's why I like to work at Cisco, where I could work remotely 1 or 2 days a week. And as an introvert, be able to recharge on those other days and give it 100% the other days. And so I'd say things that help me identify if I'm burning out is if my temper, my patience, my demeanor is not rooted in peace, joy, and the vision of what the organization needs to be doing. I've been in network operations. There are things to be stressed out about if the network's down. But for most of the stuff that we're working on, it can wait. It can wait a day. It can wait a week. We can be honest to our stakeholders, and like whatever you're burning out over, solving that mental health problem is significantly more important than whatever problem you're probably working on at work. Because if you burn yourself out, it's just like your car. If you don't change your tires and your tire explodes, suddenly you're stuck on the side of the road. If instead you had just planned ahead and say, oh, I see my tires are wearing out, let's go change those tires. So I see my life is starting to, burn out. And everybody's looks different. Introverts, extroverts, people from all kinds of walks of life. We all have different ways of recharging. Find the things that give you, when you come out of them, such great joy and peace that you're able to come back and give it 100%. And one final thing I'll say to that note is that Cisco's recently announced that they're moving to unlimited PTO from historically people earning a PTO in a way that was numerically defined. And one of the things that I want to encourage people who are at Cisco or at companies that have that is that you need to provide your own self-leadership in that capacity. And this is something that you need to have a cadence where you're working ahead and planning ahead, so it's not 3 years down the line, you're like, oh, shoot, I didn't use any PTO because I wasn't earning it. It's like, no, you have a limited PTO. It's what the economists call the tragedy of the commons, or if everyone has it, then nobody has it.
Just to expand on that, the tragedy of the commons refers to a situation in which individuals with access to public resources, also called common resources, act in their own interest and in doing so ultimately deplete the resource. This theory explains that individuals have a tendency to make decisions based on their personal needs, regardless of the negative impact it may have on others.
And so you as an individual need to be self-aware. If you are not, let's say, don't have the skills of emotional intelligence to understand when you're burning yourself out, you can ask those who are around you who really care about you to hold you accountable and that say like, hey, can you let me know when you feel like I'm starting to be a little edgy on edge? And you might not even see yourself. The people who really care about you, whether that's family, friends, coworkers, will speak that into because they don't want to see you burn out. And the last thing I'll say about that is there's also some wisdom in having just a regular cadence of an extended period of time for you to recharge yourself. And for me, that's on a quarterly basis. It looks different. We have family vacations, so I connect with my family. I have friend vacations where I connect with my close same gender friends. We play Magic the Gathering. We have fun together, drink beer or whatever. And then there's also like times for myself where, as an introvert especially, I just disconnect and I'm physically removed from my children. I love my kids, but I told my wife, like, if they're in the house with me, I'm not resting because I feel like I have to help. And so I'm like, and for me, that's looked like going to my parents' house because they moved up to Reno here. I'm in Reno, Nevada. They moved up here from the Bay Area like we did recently for them, not so much for us. And so I told my parents, I'm like, I'm just going to come down. We're going to watch some fun shows together. And then I'm going to spend the afternoon in your guest bedroom just playing computer games and, having some pizza and stuff. And like, for me, that's what it looks like to recharge, is a mixture of self-care, family care, and friend care.
No, totally understandable. I'm an introvert in my own right as well. And I think this also goes back to your point from our conversation earlier about the importance of the people at work and that you work for when you're going through a burnout or you might be stressed at work. So that kind of transitions to us a conversation that's always tough to have, especially over these last 4 years or so in preparing for career changes or layoffs. How can you ensure that your skills remain relevant in a tech industry that is ever evolving?
A couple things come to mind. One is find something you enjoy doing. Because if it's a chore for you, it's going to be hard to put in the effort to do that in the long term. That's going to grow your skills at a pace that's going to keep up with the industry, whatever industry you're in. So if that's recording podcasts and connecting with people and educating people, great. Marketing, like great. Community building, great. If it's technical skills, route switch, data center, security, cloud, all the buzzwords, automation, find your niche because you can't be a master of everything, at least initially. I mean, over the long run, you can be a master of enough things that it looks like you have the master of everything, but we only have so many hours of the day. So find the things that spark joy, that when you're doing it, it feels like the time flies. For me, that was network automation. When I did networking itself, a CCNA, moving to CCNP, it was an uphill climb. But I was fascinated by the way the systems worked and how I was able to help people. But as soon as I started going through network automation material, it just clicked. I'm like, oh, I love this. This is just, it doesn't even feel like I'm working. I can do this all day. You want to make sure that you're not burning yourself out in that regard, but you have to try a lot of different things and even ask other people that you see that they enjoy what they're doing and maybe try that too. But nights and weekends here and there, don't burn yourself out. But like, especially early on in your career, you're going to just want to try so many different things that by the time you've been doing it for 5 to 10 years, that you have a better understanding of what you like and what you don't like and focusing on the things that you like and preparing for layoffs, especially at somewhere like Cisco or other large companies that have that on a similar regular basis. It's finding those skills that are not only things you like doing, but things that people want to be actively paying people to do. And so, I know there's COBOL programmers out there who get paid very well to maintain legacy code, but you want to be in a growth area. Look at the numbers. You can ask ChatGPT or the Bridge IT over in Cisco or, Google it around and just look at the numbers. Everyone on LinkedIn and everywhere else is going to tell you different things, but to a certain extent, the numbers don't lie. Look at where the money's at. Look at where, based on a company's priorities, where they're leaving and where they're going towards. And look at where the revenue is growing and where the revenue is going stable or dropping off. And that's not to say that it couldn't come back, but if you don't know what you're doing, it's a safe bet to pick areas that are growing rather than the areas that are shrinking.
You mentioned earlier when you rejoined Cisco about some people that you had worked with prior and had professional relationships with, and you were just easy to message somebody about a job opening. Do you have another story about how your professional network helped you during a time where you were transitioning within your career?
Yeah, even getting this job and winning certifications. I think every job, except for my network to code job, were ones that I knew somebody already on the inside. That's tough to do when you first get started. When I came into Cisco, that's a whole nother story. I had a connection at my university who was at Cisco already and recommended it to me. But for coming into learning certifications most recently, I was finishing up that project for the NSO team, working closely with Ryan Rose, who was on the DevNet team at the time, helping do cross-BU functional stuff. And Ryan wasn't the only person I asked several other people, but Ryan was like, I feel like learning certifications has this great opportunity on the technical advocacy team, working with Kareem and another guy, Ashley Roach, and people that I hadn't had the opportunity to work with before, but I was impressed with their portfolio of work. And I was like, you know what? I want to take what I'm doing right now for the NSO team and take it to the next level, where right now I'm helping one set of people for automation on a specific product. What if I could do that across the board for not just NSO, but for Python, Ansible, networking, based on whatever experience I have, and other technologies down the road? Because I feel like I have a passion for learning and a positive history with certifications, that I can take those skills to the nations and help people wherever they're at. And it also came with a promotion, because you want to get paid. I'm not here at the Red Cross. And so that was also another factor where they came to me and they're like, we value you as an employee, and we want to give you more money for more responsibility. And I said, let's go. I haven't regretted it yet.
No, love that for you, and love that you enjoy doing what you're doing. I want to ask you about maybe some advice that you've received during your career that you probably took to heart and continued to pay it forward and give somebody else the same advice in their career transitions. Is there some good advice that you had received once upon a time that you continue to look back on?
Yeah, no, and I even reconnected recently with a mentor that helped me when I was an intern, and he was in the same team when I came into Cisco. And his name's Bob Scarborough, salt of the earth, great guy. And one thing that he shared with me that has paid dividends in every job I've been a part of is to come with a notebook, come prepared, and come prepared to listen, come prepared to take notes. Because I feel like people, if you've had a university education or even high school, you're asked to take notes. And after a certain point in college or even graduate school, they don't care if you take notes, because they know if you're not taking notes, you're either somebody with such excellent memory that you're able to pass the test and it doesn't matter, or somebody who's just not going to pass the test. For me, that's practical in almost every meeting I'm in. As long as it's not just we're shooting the breeze and having a good time, like as long as there is some type of action item, some type of insight, something that someone else is saying or something that comes to mind for me that I want to remember later, my memory is just not good enough to keep track of all these things. And so Bob Scarborough told me right from the go, and it's helped me in every job, is come prepared, come with, a composition book and a pen and a backup pen, and write down everything that you want to remember. I'm not trying to make a transcript. I'm not trying to take the project manager's job. I'm trying to have a system of record that allows me to be successful. So 3 weeks down the line, 6 months down the line, 2 hours down the line, I can remember what the significant things were for that meeting and call to mind what I need to do and what I can do to help other people.
No, I love that. I always keep a scratch pad right by me all the time, just making little notes, and then I'll go back later and find it very, very valuable. I want to give you the opportunity. How can our listeners connect with you and follow your work?
I am on the social media platforms promoting our learning certifications, awesome content here. So I technically have a link tree. So if you go to linktree/Reno Belk, RENOBELK, and if you want to find me on the socials, you can search for Jason Belk Reno or Reno Belk. And I think I have a pretty consistent handle across LinkedIn, Twitter, X. I don't really use Instagram because that's more a thing for my wife. Not to say I won't eventually, but I just haven't found the right audience. And maybe one day TikTok, but not quite yet.
We could get there. Potentially we'll get there one of these days.
One step at a time.
Jason, really appreciate you sitting down with us today, and best of luck moving forward.
That's it for our episode with Senior Technical Advocate Jason Belk. To learn more about the resources Jason mentioned, please visit the Cisco Learning Network at learningnetwork.cisco.com and the Cisco U at u.cisco.com. And please subscribe to the Cisco Learning Network podcast to hear more stories of individuals using Cisco certifications to enhance their careers and lives. This podcast also covers changes to the Cisco certification portfolio as well as changes in Cisco technology, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss important news and updates. Thanks for listening.